Hi guys, and welcome back to On The Shelf. So you might remember from a while ago I did a new video in the Manga Wars series. So this focused on two fantastic samurai based series. We had Vagabond and Blade of the Immortal. Now this isn't another one of those Manga Wars videos, although I do have more coming very soon, but this is just a straight up, straightforward manga review. And the manga that I want to talk about today is actually a manga work from one of those authors, because I think that this series is a really worthwhile series, and sadly it's one that I really don't see a whole lot of people talking about. I think there's a little bit more buzz surrounding it at the moment because there's a new volume set to come out next year. So this series is by the creator of Blade of the Immortal, Hiroaki Samura, and it is of course Die Wergelder. So Die Wergelder is released by Kodansha at the moment. There's currently 2 volumes out. So these are like omnibus versions. I think each of them are 2-in-1s. So collectively, we currently have 4 volumes in total. Now to just do a quick sort of comparison, if you put it up next to a Blade of the Immortal volume from Dark Horse, they're pretty similar. They're pretty much the same size, the same height. Arguably, the Dark Horse ones are slightly better in terms of like paper quality and things like that, but the Kodansha ones are way cheaper. So, you know, weigh it up that way. So diving straight into it. Wergelder is described on the back of the book as, in Germanic law, the money paid by a murderer or his family to the victim's family in atonement. Now that kind of sums up this manga perfectly, obviously, because the whole thing is kind of a revenge story. It centers around 3 different women that are all on very different journeys, and I would say the best thing about this story is there isn't one set main protagonist. We seem to be introduced to, you know, these 3 different women at different stages of the story, and somehow all of their paths cross, and it becomes this very sort of chaotic and violent experience for all of them. So I think the best way to do it would be to kind of go through each of those characters and their backgrounds, give you a little bit of an overview, because as I said, I don't think that this story has one main protagonist, and that was kind of like one of the things that really took me aback when I first dove into it. So the first female protagonist that we're introduced to goes by the name of Nami, but her real name, I believe, is Trane. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's spelled kind of like train, Tran. Who knows? I'm really bad at these sort of things. So our first protagonist, we're introduced to her as a prostitute, I suppose, to begin with. She's seducing a man, and it's quickly revealed that she's actually just doing that as a cover to get more information about this mysterious island and all the things that are going on there. Now, the coolest way that this happens is that she actually kills the guy, but in a very dramatic and quite out there fashion. So she has like a robotic hand, and she grabs him by the face, and her hand rotates to the point where his face is turned upside down. And it was one of the coolest, most, you know, shocking panels that I've seen in a first chapter for a very long time. Now fast forward to our second female protagonist, and this would be Shinobu. Now she comes into the story pretty early on because she's got involved in quite a lot of dodgy events with a Yakuza group. So her and her partner have actually stolen a lot of money from this Yakuza group, and the way that she can pay off this debt is by visiting the same mysterious island as our first protagonist and interrupting a deal between 2 rival Yakuza groups. So Shinobu goes to the island to interrupt this exchange. She doesn't know what's inside this briefcase, and she doesn't really want to know. She just wants to go and get it over with, steal that briefcase with her, you know, band of Yakuza colleagues, shall we say, and that's her debt paid off, and she can get on with her life. But little does she know that our first female protagonist is also there to interrupt the party. Now that's where it gets really crazy. This is just, you know, pretty early on in the first volume. Our first protagonist with the metallic hand, you know, a strange sort of female assassin, is now wearing a blonde wig and a cowboy hat, and she's holding a sniper rifle. And she shoots a lot of people, she interrupts everything, and in amongst all the chaos, Shinobu decides that this is her opportunity to steal the briefcase and get away scot-free. But little does she know, our third female protagonist is about to show up. Now this would be Jai Mao. Again, very sorry for the pronunciation, but she is a Chinese assassin. She's been hired by this big corporation to essentially make sure that things run smoothly on the island. So she turns up and jumps out of a helicopter, and her and our first protagonist start to fight. Now, I think you'll already agree, there's a lot of characters, it's very confusing, and really early on, it reminded me a lot of Fire Punch in that it throws everything it has at you straight away, and it kind of can bombard you and overwhelm you a little bit. But the best thing about this manga is just everything, I suppose. It's so refreshing because it's so off the wall. All the characters are really interesting, and of course Samura has some of the best fight choreography ever. The fight scenes are so great, there's a lot to digest in the first couple of volumes, and it just gets better from there on. So of course, this whole situation ends with a lot of violence, a lot of people die, but in amongst the confusion, Shinobu manages to steal the briefcase and get it back to the Yakuza boss. But what's inside definitely leaves her shocked, to say the least. I'm not going to spoil that. I think that's part of the brilliance of this story, is that I had no idea what to expect. I think I just sort of thought it would be money or drugs, but it's definitely not. So following that exchange, the whole story seems to center around the mystery of this Hill Miner Corporation. So they, of course, the big bad corporation in the story that have taken over this island and turned it into a pleasure island. So everyone on this island is either a prostitute, a Yakuza, or a customer, shall we say. But the reason they're doing this is a huge cover-up for something else that they're doing entirely. Now, we as readers still don't understand, and I think that's part of the mystery of the story. I still don't understand what the Hill Miner Corporation is doing. But what I do know is they're experimenting on people, they're killing a lot of people, and there's a lot more than meets the eye about this particular island, in that it seems, not to sort of make it sound a little bit like Lost, but it seems to be special. There's a special quality and property to the island, and that's the reason as to why they've chosen it as their place for research. Now, I think what we can gather is that our first protagonist, Trane, has, come out of the other side of some of the horrible things that the Hill Miner Corporation have done to her. So she is on a revenge mission, and that sort of makes me think that she is the main character. But again, with Samura's manga, I think if you've read Blade of the Immortal, it would appear that way, but there's so many characters that you can never truly say which one is the main one, I guess. So yeah, as Trane is on her kind of mission for revenge, she somehow crosses paths with Shinobu again, and they seem to team up because they both want to know what's going on with this island, and they both have, qualities that complement each other, so they quickly become allies, I suppose, to defeat a greater evil, and they both make their way to the island with some Yakuza members in tow. Some other notable, fantastic characters in this story as well. One of them would be Solly Kill. Yeah, bear with me, a lot of the characters have, very odd names in this one. But Solly is essentially the kind of Yakuza torturer, if you like. We're first introduced to her as she's torturing someone in really horrific ways, and she kind of gets off on that. She really enjoys the violence of it, but she's actually a very petite, very young looking girl as well, so that makes her just that bit more sinister. We also have one of the Yakuza bosses, Azuma. He's really cool. He's kind of the stereotypical pushes his glasses up type, who's, the silent but really, quite adept at what he does, and there's some really cool fighting in this as well. And that's one thing that I really want to talk about in this manga. Is it's talked about by Samura in some of the kind of afterwards of the volumes, but he actually really tried to put in some kind of stylistic martial arts in this. So there's actually like some capoeira dance fighting, there's just a bit of kind of the more obscure forms of martial arts, and I think the reasoning for that was he actually says that he doesn't want to believe that those don't work in real life fighting combat scenarios. You imagine you're in a street brawl with a UFC fighter and you start doing capoeira, chances are the UFC fighter is going to win. But, you know, in all those really old school kung fu movies and, you know, the Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee kind of era, those forms of fighting were always very stylistic, and they always just looked really fascinating and really, you know, overpowering, and anyone who fought that way just was impossible to beat. And I think Samura is trying to encapsulate some of that in this manga. So there's actually a few kind of security guards, if you like, for the Hill Miner Corporation that fight in very different styles. I couldn't tell you what they are, but one of them's quite a very stocky woman. She almost reminds me a little bit of E Honda from Street Fighter. There's just such an array of characters in this story that it really just adds to it, that he put that kind of little bit of extra effort in to make the combat so unique as well. Now, I think what really sets this manga apart from other manga that I've reviewed on this channel is perhaps just the mystery of it. So there's really kind of an element of, I have no idea at times what's going on. I definitely got some of the characters confused in the early stages because, you know, not only am I being introduced to all these different characters, but then some of them choose to wear disguises as well. So it was kind of a bit of a puzzle to try and piece together which character was who. There's also things revealed later on that some characters might have had plastic surgery to make them look different as well. So it can be a bit of a struggle in the earlier chapters to kind of get to grips with who everyone is. But I think that what Samura always has really, you know, shined with is his characters and just the amount of time that he gives to each of them. So they're all really fleshed out. They all get a bit of backstory. They all get a lot of time within the manga, so it doesn't just focus on a one-sided viewpoint. I think the most important thing about this manga is just the amount of female representation. It's just so great and refreshing to see a female character that isn't just completely useless in a manga. You know, there's been a lot of female characters in the manga that I've read that have simply been there to be a damsel in distress, a Peach to the Mario, if you like, where they, you know, they kind of look pretty, but they don't do a whole lot. I think more recently I would jump to a few of the characters in Black Clover, actually, that have kind of pushed the boundary of female protagonists, because even going as far back as Naruto, I always found that a lot of the female cast were kind of underdeveloped and underused. So yeah, of course, Die Wergelder is just fantastic because it actually seems to focus solely on female protagonists. All three of them are badass, all three of them are completely different as well, and they're all very savage in what they do. There's kind of a scene, I really don't want to spoil, but I have tweeted about it, so if you follow me on Twitter you might have seen it, but there's a scene where a certain appendage is ripped off, and it got pretty graphic. And it was the most badass thing that I've read in ages. So I think I was just super excited to talk about this manga on the channel. I really want your opinions on it as well, and I want more people to read this. It's printed, I believe, bi-monthly, or maybe, you know, every 3 or 4 months, I'm not sure, because Samura is also working on another series at the same time. So the volumes are sadly very slow to print, but that doesn't make it any less worthwhile. And of course, with the third omnibus coming out this January or February, now is the perfect time to pick up this manga because you're not going to have to wait too long for the next volume. So if you're looking for something with the fantastic art style and choreography that Samura brings to the table, alongside a very diverse cast of characters, a really strange and constantly ever-changing storyline that's reminiscent of Chainsaw Man, Gantz and Fire Punch, then Die Wergelder is definitely for you. So thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed this short review. I'm going to be doing a few more on the channel every now and then. As I say, they don't tend to do all that well in terms of views, but I really love making them, and this channel is as much for me as it is for you. Another important thing to mention is I'm trying to make this channel a bit more inclusive. I want more feedback from you guys. I want to know more of what you want to see on the channel, so please let me know down below what series you'd like me to review. If you think that I would enjoy it, or if you've seen my collection video, which I'll leave a link to somewhere in this video, and you want to know my opinions on one of the series that I own, please let me know down below and I'll be sure to try my best to review it for you. So thanks for watching, I really appreciate all your support, and as always, stay awesome.